What started as a single reckless click turned into an online explosion that nobody could ignore. The moment Tyla decided to amplify that shady retweet, the internet felt the temperature rise instantly. This was not casual shade. This was a public provocation aimed straight at a living legend. And everyone watching knew one thing for sure: Nicki Minaj does not ignore disrespect. She does not brush it off. She does not move quietly. The timeline froze because people understood what was coming next, and fear mixed with excitement spread across social media like wildfire. Nicki did not respond calmly. She did not respond softly. She detonated. Her reaction felt less like a clapback and more like a declaration of war. Accusations flew. Lines were drawn. Fans flooded the comments, choosing sides in real time, reposting screenshots, adding fuel to an already blazing fire. Nicki framed the situation as betrayal, as someone trying to profit from her name while questioning her legacy in the same breath. To her supporters, this was not drama. This was disrespect toward a queen who built an empire brick by brick while others watched from the sidelines. But here is where the story turns darker. Tyla was not speaking into a vacuum. Nicki had already been under scrutiny, with people whispering about her recent online behavior and questioning her emotional state. Those whispers turned into full-blown discussions, and Tyla's repost felt like a match thrown onto gasoline. The message itself was brutal, suggesting disappearance, irrelevance, and instability. It crossed a line from criticism into humiliation, and that is where everything escalated beyond repair. Now the internet is split straight down the middle. Some see Nicki as a woman pushed too far, responding to relentless provocation. Others see Tyla as someone who underestimated the consequences of poking a cultural giant. Reaction videos, tweets, and comment threads continue to pile up by the second, each one louder than the last. What began as shade has transformed into a full-scale digital feud, and one thing is painfully clear: this is no longer about music. This is about ego, legacy, loyalty, and what happens when online clout collides with unchecked emotion. What made that repost sting even harder is that it tapped into a conversation that had already been brewing quietly online. The message carried the energy of a final verdict, like someone standing over a fallen empire and declaring the era officially dead. It acknowledged Nicki's influence, her impact, the way she resurrected an entire genre and dominated it for years, but then slammed the door shut with ruthless finality. And while many people admitted Tyla should never have amplified something that cruel, others could not ignore the uncomfortable truth beneath it. The tone echoed what critics had been whispering for months about Nicki's increasingly chaotic online presence. Nicki has always been fearless with her opinions. She speaks loudly, challenges the industry, and refuses to bow to executives or narratives she feels are forced onto her. That boldness is exactly why her fans ride so hard for her. But even supporters admit that sometimes the volume goes too high, the lines blur, and the rants spiral past the point of control. The confidence that once felt empowering can suddenly feel volatile, and that shift is what has people uneasy. The real spark, though, was not the retweet itself. It was what came before it. Nicki's bizarre and aggressive rant aimed at California Governor Gavin Newsom sent shockwaves through the timeline. Her recent alignment with Republican talking points had already been stirring backlash, and this moment poured gasoline on that fire. She tweeted about trans children in a way that instantly polarized audiences, framing herself as the voice of normal adults while mocking political narratives. Screenshots spread instantly, commentary channels went live within minutes, and the discourse exploded beyond music entirely. Then, just when people thought the rant could not get more confusing, Nicki pivoted. Suddenly the tone shifted from rage to something uncomfortably flirty, sarcastic, and contradictory. One moment she sounded disgusted, the next she was describing Gavin as a privileged pretty boy handed success because of his looks. The insults came wrapped in humor, then doubled back into disdain. Love or hate? Mockery or obsession? Nobody could tell anymore, and that confusion only fueled more concern. Nicki did not stop. She kept tweeting, stacking contradictions, dragging the moment out until the timeline felt exhausted but glued. And then it happened. She noticed the retweet. Almost immediately, she fired off a message that felt like a warning shot rather than a response. She referred to new scum on the timeline, making it clear that playtime was over. Her message carried a familiar theme: people who treat everything like a joke eventually meet someone who does not joke back. From that point forward, escalation was inevitable. Nicki unleashed a tweet so chaotic, so layered, and so aggressive that it detonated the internet on impact. Names were mentioned. Insults were piled on. Laughter emojis masked venom. Tyla was no longer just a person who retweeted shade. She was framed as a pawn, a puppet, someone sent by forces far bigger than herself. And in one breath, Nicki widened the battlefield by invoking Roc Nation, Jay-Z, and old industry wounds that never truly healed. This is where casual drama turns into something deeper. Because with Nicki Minaj, nothing exists in a vacuum. Every jab is connected to history. Every name drop carries years of resentment, suspicion, and unresolved conflict. When she brings up Roc Nation, it is not random. It is a callback to long-standing industry tensions, perceived sabotage, and power dynamics she believes have worked against her behind closed doors. Calling Tyla a puppet was not just an insult. It was an accusation of orchestration. In Nicki's mind, artists do not simply stumble into conflict with her. They are positioned. They are encouraged. They are sent forward as distractions, as tests, as weapons. Whether that belief is reality or paranoia depends entirely on who you ask, but to Nicki, it feels logical. It feels earned. For years, she has watched newer female artists enter the industry and, intentionally or not, align themselves opposite her legacy. Some take direct shots. Others move quietly, letting timing and interviews do the work. Over time, that pattern has left her hypervigilant, always scanning for betrayal. So when another young artist's name gets pulled into controversy involving her, Nicki does not pause to reflect. She strikes. That is why Roc Nation and Jay-Z remain recurring characters in her narrative. To outsiders, it can look obsessive. To her, it is pattern recognition. She believes she has been targeted, undermined, and provoked for years, and every new incident confirms it. Her reactions are not just about the present moment. They are the release of years of bottled resentment. Meanwhile, Tyla stands on the opposite side of this digital warzone, suddenly caught in a storyline far bigger than a repost. After Nicki's tweets gained momentum, Tyla quickly denied throwing shade at all. But then came another move that raised eyebrows. She posted an image on Instagram using Nicki's own song, Your Love. And that choice felt anything but accidental. Because if you are trying to prove innocence, using the music of the very person accusing you sends a complicated message. To some, it looked like a peace offering, a quiet nod of respect. To others, it felt strategic, almost ironic. As if she was saying, why would I attack someone whose work I clearly admire? Either way, the damage was already done. The narrative had taken on a life of its own, and in the court of social media, intent rarely matters once the crowd smells blood. Along with that post, Tyla tried to soften the blow by writing, "In trouble on the net again, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days hacked." And the internet collectively rolled its eyes. Because this excuse is ancient in celebrity years. It is the most recycled line in digital scandal history. Every time a public figure gets caught liking the wrong tweet, reposting the wrong opinion, or aligning with the wrong energy, suddenly their account was compromised. Suddenly it was not them. Suddenly technology took the blame. And at this point, the audience barely even reacts anymore because the pattern is painfully obvious. People have seen this play out too many times to pretend otherwise. Social media has trained its users to recognize damage control scripts, and the "I was hacked" narrative sits right at the top of that list. It is the digital equivalent of standing in front of a broken window and insisting the brick flew in by itself. So when Tyla leaned on that excuse, it did not calm the situation at all. If anything, it made the suspicion louder. Because when something is truly accidental, people expect clarity, not vagueness. They expect accountability, not recycled phrasing pulled straight from the celebrity apology handbook. But here is the uncomfortable truth that gets ignored in moments like this. Not everyone is built to survive Nicki Minaj's level of confrontation. Nicki is not just an artist with opinions. She is a cultural force backed by one of the most loyal, aggressive, and relentless fan bases in music history. Once she turns her attention towards someone, that person is no longer dealing with one individual. They are facing millions of eyes analyzing every word, every caption, every facial expression, every silence. Even if Tyla truly meant no harm, the psychological pressure of that spotlight alone is enough to make anyone panic. And this is where the power imbalance becomes impossible to deny. Nicki is a veteran. She has survived industry politics, media hit jobs, public meltdowns, and years of being framed as the villain. She knows how this game works because she has been playing it for over a decade. Tyla, on the other hand, is still building her footing, still learning that the internet does not forgive confusion or hesitation. When those two worlds collide, fairness is never part of the equation. One speaks from a place of legacy and accumulated resentment. The other speaks from fear and damage control. But Nicki does not care about any of that. In her world, intent does not matter nearly as much as impact. If she feels disrespected, she responds. Loudly. Publicly. Without cushioning her words to spare anyone's comfort. She does not wait for explanations or private apologies. She handles conflict in front of the audience because that is where the offense happened. That unapologetic approach is exactly why her fans adore her and why her critics stay alarmed. She refuses to dilute herself for anyone. At the same time, her paranoia, whether justified or not, has become inseparable from her public image. Every slight is traced back to the same shadowy forces. Every disagreement feels like confirmation of a bigger plot. And while real industry politics absolutely exist, framing every conflict as an attack can turn even neutral moments into battlefields. It creates a cycle where defensiveness fuels conflict, and conflict reinforces defensiveness. Nobody ever truly wins. So when Tyla claims she was hacked, it honestly does not matter whether that is true. The moment has already passed. Nicki has already spoken. The internet has already chosen sides. Screenshots have been saved. Think pieces have been written. In the digital age, perception outweighs intent every single time. And perception is shaped by history, reputation, and power, not explanations posted after the fact. This situation was never just about a repost or a caption. It was about legacy versus proximity, dominance versus survival. Nicki is fighting ghosts from her past while reacting to present-day triggers. Tyla is learning, in real time, how unforgiving fame becomes the second your name brushes against controversy. And the audience, as always, is watching, judging, and waiting for the next escalation. Because with Nicki Minaj, there is always a next move. She does not forget. She does not let things fade quietly. She does not allow her narrative to be rewritten without resistance. Whether people label that as paranoia, protection, or perception depends entirely on who is watching. But one fact is undeniable. Once her name enters a conversation, that conversation explodes beyond control, and it rarely ends peacefully. And fans made it clear almost immediately that they did not believe Tyla for even a second. The dragging was swift and merciless. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, blogs, comment sections, reaction videos, everywhere you looked people were calling her out. They said she was not hacked. They said she was lying. They said she just was not brave enough to stand on what she did. And in the court of public opinion, that is already a guilty verdict. Nobody waits for proof anymore. Nobody cares about explanations once they feel disrespected, especially when it involves someone they fiercely defend. The narrative locked in fast. Tyla knew exactly what she was doing. She meant to shade Nicki. And now she was backpedaling because the backlash burned too hot. That is what people decided, and once the internet decides, there is no appeal process. No clarification post is strong enough to undo it. What made things even uglier is how quickly the conversation stopped being about the retweet at all. People started dragging her identity into it, questioning her place, her authenticity, her intentions. Comments popped up accusing her of pandering, of borrowing black culture, black aesthetics, and black audiences to build her career while playing innocent the moment things went left. Whether fair or not, the discourse turned vicious. This was no longer criticism. It was personal. They dissected everything. Her body. Her accent. Her interviews. Her rise to fame. Her personality. Some said she hides behind a sweet girl image whenever controversy hits. Others claimed she plays clueless too often and that this time the timing exposed her. According to the internet jury, the retweet was not an accident. It was too convenient. And once that belief took hold, there was nothing she could say to escape it. That is the real danger of moments like this. One click can turn into a character assassination. One repost can rewrite how millions of people see you. And when the storm involves Nicki Minaj, it is never just rain. It is a hurricane. Others were far more ruthless, with absolutely no interest in giving Tyla the benefit of the doubt. They said her account was not hacked, not even remotely, arguing that she is far too media-trained, far too calculated, and far too aware of internet culture to fall back on such a tired excuse. Some comments were downright vicious, claiming she knew exactly what she was doing and only switched her tone once she realized she had poked the wrong bear. Because Nicki Minaj fans are not a group you casually offend and then walk away from untouched. Everyone knows that. The Barbs do not debate politely. They mobilize. They dig through timelines. They mass report. They trend hashtags. They pull screenshots from a decade ago if they need to. So when Tyla tried to laugh it off as confusion or a hack, people did not hear honesty. They heard panic. To a lot of viewers, that explanation sounded like fear setting in after reality hit. It sounded like someone realizing too late that they underestimated the reach, loyalty, and aggression of Nicki Minaj's fanbase. Once that realization kicks in, damage control becomes instinctive, not thoughtful. And that is exactly how the internet interpreted it. Not as innocence, but as retreat. Still, not everyone was fully convinced it was deliberate. A smaller group of voices tried to slow the dogpile down and introduce logic into the chaos. They pointed out that shading Nicki Minaj intentionally would be an unbelievably reckless move for someone at Tyla's stage of her career. Tyla is still establishing herself globally, still building industry relationships, still positioning her brand carefully across markets. Nicki Minaj is not someone you randomly provoke unless you are fully prepared for war, and Tyla has never projected that kind of energy. She has never given "I want smoke with Nicki" vibes, not once. That made some people question whether the retweet could have been a genuine mistake, a slip, or even something cued without fully processing the context. Others brought up an inconvenient detail that did not fit the outrage narrative. Just weeks earlier, Tyla had publicly shown support for Nicki when Nicki was getting dragged for speaking recklessly about Cardi B's children. At that time, most celebrities stayed silent because anything involving Nicki versus Cardi is radioactive territory. Tyla did not have to say anything, but she did. And that mattered to some people. They questioned why Tyla would suddenly flip and shade Nicki after publicly supporting her not long ago. That inconsistency made the situation feel murkier than social media wanted to admit. And then there was the hack argument itself, which raised eyebrows for a completely different reason. Let us be honest for one moment. The idea that Tyla's account was hacked solely for a hacker to retweet shade about Nicki Minaj and then do absolutely nothing else sounds strange. No scam links. No crypto nonsense. No explicit posts. No chaos. Hackers usually do the most. They do not sneak in, toss a little shade, and quietly log out. That left people stuck between two explanations that both felt off. Either Tyla did it on purpose and lied, or she experienced the most oddly specific, uneventful hack imaginable. Neither option felt satisfying, which is exactly why the argument refused to die. But here is the brutal truth. None of that nuance mattered to Nicki Minaj. Not even a little bit. She was not interested in explanations, timelines, or benefit of the doubt. From her perspective, a line was crossed. Intent was irrelevant. Impact was everything. And once she decided she felt disrespected, the response was inevitable. Nicki went off in the way only Nicki does, blending rage, sarcasm, exaggeration, and outright menace into a public dragging that her fans both fear and worship. She did not soften her words. She did not choose restraint. She made it painfully clear that she felt played and that she was not letting it slide under any circumstances. Then she escalated it further by effectively unleashing the barbs. And anyone who has spent more than 5 minutes online understands what that means. That is not just a clapback. That is a digital hit ordered in plain sight. When Nicki signals her fanbase, it is intentional. She knows their power. She knows their volume. She knows how quickly they can hijack a narrative and turn someone's mentions into a war zone. It is pressure by design. At that point, Tyla was no longer dealing with random internet users or casual critics. She was officially in Nicki Minaj's crosshairs, and that is a completely different level of smoke. Trending over a messy retweet is one thing. Trending because Nicki Minaj herself is dragging you, threatening you, and mobilizing her fans against you is something else entirely. The power imbalance could not be more obvious. Nicki has decades in the industry, a fiercely loyal fanbase, and a reputation for never forgetting a slight. Tyla, by comparison, is still trying to secure her footing. The situation also reopened a bigger, uglier conversation about how new artists navigate stan culture, especially when they are